All right, everybody. Apparently, my show start little kickoff thing that I typically play does not want to agree with me right now, and I don't fully understand why. Not a big deal at all. So we will just go ahead and kick off the show. Actually, doesn't look like StreamYard's banners are wanting.
Oh. Can you hear me? I cannot hear you. Nope.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but scratchy.
Okay, so I'm working on we've got a little bit of some weird weather going on here, and it looks like my internet went down on me. So, no big issue. We just keep moving forward as normal, and let's just kind of jump into it. Sorry, let's kind of start over.
No worries. You get some feedback in the audio, though, just so you know. It's kind
Okay, I'm trying to get this to work for me. So, anyways, David, let's just kind of restart here. I kind of got thrown off of my jam here. Technology sucks when it doesn't work. It's great when it does. So I just lost internet to my entire system. So I do apologize for a little bit of a hiccup in the start, but let's kind of jump right in. While I fix my internet, I'm going to give you the opportunity to go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know who you are. Let us know a little bit about Blanco Cigars, and then we'll kick everything off from there.
So thank you very much, Ryan. Welcome to the show, everybody. As you said, I'm David Blanco of Blanco Cigar Company. This happens to be a guest that I happen to have with me at our headquarters here in Clearwater, Florida, the Clearwater, Florida area. And I guess I'll say it for him since he didn't have his original introduction. Welcome to the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show, everybody. Standing in at the moment, David Blanco of Blanco Cigars. And this is Dom, our UK brand ambassador, sitting next to me all the way from Portsmouth, England, the south of England.
Evening, guys.
And Ryan, are you back up, brother?
I am. I'm jumping in the studio right now on my computer, so you're going to see me kind of switch over here. All right.
As I mentioned, we're at headquarters in Clearwater, Seminole, Florida, which is, I mentioned Clearwater because most people don't know where Seminole is. It's the Clearwater, Tampa area, St. Petersburg area. Our headquarters down here is a 5,000 square foot space. It's our North American distribution facility as well as our headquarters. We also have an area in the EU for European distribution and the Middle East, as well as we use this facility, which is a bonded facility for distribution to the rest of the world outside those areas. My family's been in the industry since 1886. I am a fifth generation cigar professional. I say that because there are many different terms to be in the industry. You can be a grower, a manufacturer, a brand owner, and then you have your expertise areas, farming, fermentation, blending, and rolling. My family's originally from Cuba, and the cigar industry portion of our family. And I'm the first one born here in the United States. I was born in Chicago, so you guys might hear that accent.
Same here. Same here.
You're born in Chicago, bro?
Yeah. So again, everybody, thank you so much for sticking through. Got the internet back up. Thanks for jumping on to the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show. Big shout out to all the sponsors of the show as well. We'll go through a little bit more of a sponsor shout out near the end of the show, but you will see them across the bottom of the show as well. We are in with David Blanco, who just kind of took over the start of the show as being so kind and a absolute professional that he is, and kind of just guest hosted for the first couple minutes of the show. Very much appreciate that, David. And yes, I am from Evergreen Park.
No kidding.
Yep. I am born and raised in Evergreen Park High School, that little crappy square box in the corner of 99th and Kedzie.
And so when did you finally leave Chicago?
Not quick enough. No, I am a country boy, mountain. That's why we moved out here to Colorado. The city, I just wasn't able to go out and shoot my guns and go hunting easily into the suburbs. Well, I guess it depends on what... It depends on what Chicago suburb you live in.
I was gonna say, you can do that. You can do that on the west side of the city of Chicago now, any day of the week.
Oh, I know, right? It's open season for a lot of things out there. But my family ended up going down to Bloomington Normal when I turned 18. And from there, we moved to a rural area outside of Bloomington Normal. And then I moved to Colorado around 6 years ago. Actually, a little over 6 years ago now. So
you're out of Illinois only 6 years?
Out of Illinois only 6 years, yes. And, you know, we just, a lot of our family moved out. And the only real family that I have there is as far as close family, even on my wife's side, is my mom and dad, and my sister lives in Plainfield.
Gotcha. Well, for those of you familiar with Chicago, I went to Lane Technical High School, the largest high school on the north side of the city, public high school. So, yes, I am a product of the Chicago public school system.
And look how you turned out, though, right? Like I am
the one in a million
exception. You are an exception to the CPS system. Absolutely. And you didn't get shot going to school either there in Chicago.
Got shot at.
Oh, well, hopefully that was military later on. Well, not hopefully, but you know.
No, it was really. It was living in the city of Chicago. So other than being in the military, I've done a few other things and other jobs in my life. I joined the military out of high school. I know I was talking about but I became a deputy sheriff for Cook County. Mm-hmm. And after that, I went to the Chicago Fire Department. I was a fire paramedic officer there for 7 years. So, yes, I've been everything but shot. I've been shot at, been stabbed, punched, kicked, spit on, everything, not in the cigar business.
Well, I
But
tell you what, I would rather be shot at than shot, personally.
Correct. So yeah, it goes with the territory. Being a civil servant, emergency services, whether it's law enforcement or fire EMS, it's part of it. And then of course there's the military side. So I did serve overseas and tour in Afghanistan. I spent.
Thank you so much for your service.
So, it was a pleasure and an honor, and I consider it an honor to be able to serve my country. And not everybody gets that honor. I know a lot of people wish they could serve their country, and they're not able to do so in uniform. But service comes in many different forms and shapes. So you can still serve your country and be a productive citizen and not have to put on the uniform. Just participate. So
just got to be a good citizen.
That's correct.
That makes your life as somebody in the military a lot easier. Mm-hmm. So let's kind of dive into 1998, pre-Blanco. We'll go 6 months pre-Blanco. What was the start of that conversation? I know your father founded Blanco Cigars. So kind of, was it always supposed to be you and him, or did you join it afterwards?
Yeah. So to actually give you that synopsis, I got to go a little bit before that, because
go ahead.
I was growing up around cigars, but never thought it to be, and nor was it at the time, a business opportunity or a venture that I thought I would ever be involved in. I grew up a kid in Chicago wanting to be the police and being in the military. That was what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. Cigars were something where I was always around, being in a Cuban family. So the grandfather, all these people would be around, uncles and stuff. They would smoke cigars. They would play dominoes, drink Cuban coffee, that kind of thing. That's part of the culture of Cuban heritage. So it was always around, but never did I think it was an opportunity or would be an option for me a vocation as I got older, because younger people weren't smoking cigars at that time. There were no such things as cigar lounges. They didn't exist. It wasn't until the advent of Cigar Aficionado in 1992, 93 that a cigar boom occurred. Now, I had been smoking cigars at that age, but I was only one of all my friends that did, because of the link that I had for my family's culture. For me, it was kind of a legacy, right? For me to continue smoking cigars and become part of that culture. But as I became the subject matter expert in the boom to all my friends, because they're like, hey, man, this is popular. How do you smoke a cigar? How do you light it? How do you cut it? Hey, Dave smokes cigars. So, of course, they came to me and asked me what a good cigar was, what a bad cigar was. And then they would see that I was smoking cigars and be like, hey, can I get one? It must be good if you're smoking it. Can I get one of those? Sure. And I take one and give it to them. And then it was, man, this was really good. Can I get another one?
Yeah,
sure.
There's the store.
And then it was, I was getting cigars from the family. So then it was, we'll buy them from you. And that's when I said, buy them from me? Maybe the legacy that my father's generation, it would have died with him because he left Cuba and everything from the family blew up from the Cuban Revolution. Maybe this legacy would not die with him. Maybe there was an opportunity for me to now continue that legacy forward. And I was in my mid-20s. At that time, I was already on the fire department. And I said to him, I think I'd like to get into the cigar business. There's an opportunity here. Cigars are becoming popular. The boom was going on. Everybody and their brother was trying to open up a cigar company and a cigar store and everything else. And so good choice. Blanco 9 Lancero. And I said, Dad, I think I'd be interested in doing this, but I can't do it by myself. Would you become interested in becoming my partner? And Frank, my father's brother, my uncle, thought the three of us, because it would be a family thing, right? Generational. And they said, well, I'll tell you what, if you invest everything you own, we'll become your partners. It was kind of like a gut check. I'm mid-20s. They're like, this kid wants to get a cigar business. What does he really know about anything about business, right? If he's really serious, let's see. And so I called their bluff and I put all my chips on the table, what there were of them at that age, right? And
that military salary was, and the fireman salary, I mean, it is exhaustively large. So I'm sure it was
huge, just huge. So So they said, okay, well, he's serious. So we'll give this an opportunity and a shot. And that's when we started doing the planning and doing the due diligence on how to open the company and what we needed to do and what everybody's role was going to be. My uncle Francisco was going to handle day-to-day production activities in the factory. I was going to do production design, blending, band design, box design, and sales. And then my father was going to handle everything administratively with regard to licensing, taxes, payroll, inventory costs, all of that stuff, all the business aspect of it, right? So that's how this rolled up to 1998. And in 1998, we incorporated in February of 1998. And that's when we started Los Blancos Cigar Company. We called it that because it was three of us. Los Blancos, the Blancos Cigar Company. To this day, I am now the only one in the family out of the three of us. My uncle, unfortunately, he was a 20-year military veteran and a Vietnam veteran at that, was exposed to Agent Orange while he was serving, but a very minor dosage, low exposure when he was young. So he was able to serve the 20 plus years. And at an older age, however, it started catching up with him. So shortly after that, in 2000, after we opened the factory in Ybor City in Tampa, not far from here, he became ill and wasn't able to walk anymore. And when that happened, we were kind of like, what are we going to do now? Because he was the day-to-day operational management of the factory. Mm-hmm. And if I don't smoke on this every once in a while, it's going to go out on me. So pardon me.
No, that's actually one of the reasons why I love a Lancero, because there's no rush. It saves itself.
So at that point, it was just my father and I, and we had to close the factory and figure out what we were going to do. So my father called his cousin in Nicaragua, because only my immediate family came here to the United States. The rest of the family that was involved in tobacco went over to Nicaragua, and they went someplace where they could continue to grow premium tobacco for cigars rather than come to the United States and start something over in a different career field. There was reasons for my immediate family coming here to the United States because of political reasons that they had to flee here to the United States. That being said, he called up his cousin down there, said, Frank can't walk anymore. Francisco, we call him Frank for short. He couldn't walk anymore. He's ill. Can we just shift production to your facility? Because we were buying material from them anyway. And they said, absolutely, come on down. And that's when we moved our operations down to Nicaragua and Esteli back in 2000. Although I had been already conversing and buying tobacco and doing business down there, the production was in the United States. So I met my mentor at that time in 2000 when I went to the factory down there. And I guess I should mention my cousins down there. My father and Nestor Plasencia are cousins. I refer to Nestor.
Hell of a cousin.
Yeah. If you can't pick your family, but if you want to get into this business and you have to be family with somebody, Plasencias aren't a bad family to be with.
Yeah. It's like having an actor as a father and going into acting after that. I mean, that's a great resource.
It is. It was a phenomenal, actually the best resource you could ever wish for, not only in tobacco and experience and everything else. But now I call Nestor uncle out of respect because he's my father's generation. That's how in our culture, in Spanish culture, you do that. I've been frequently heard as saying, Nestor's your uncle? Yes, he's my uncle. I call him my uncle. He's technically my cousin. Now, Nestor Jr. and I, as we call him in the United States, or Nestor Andres, who has now taken over the company, as I have here, we call each other cousin because that's what we are. We're only 4 years apart from each other, so we're on the same generational scale. But once we moved down there, I met my mentor, and I learned how to really blend cigars because I was blending here in the United States, but I was learning as I went. I was kind of self-taught. I had resources from other people who were in the industry that were blenders here in Florida that I was learning from piecemeal here and there. But it wasn't until I got to the Plasencia factory and met the master blender at that time, whose name was Evelio Oviedo Dominguez. I say his name clearly and to remind myself every day. I have a picture of him over my office, in my office over my desk, of his contributions, not only to my success that I've had so far, but the success that he has had throughout his life. This gentleman started at the age of 8 in Cuba in the tobacco industry, doing everything from leaf sorting all the way up to what he finally became, which was the rolling union president in Cuba before the revolution. He was also the head of quality control, master blender, and master roller at the A. Chapman factory. He ran that factory with regard to all those responsibilities. And as a blender, his most iconic blends, and he has blended many cigars that have a lot of people here have smoked throughout their lives. But as a blender who is behind the scenes, he sometimes doesn't get seen or get the kudos he should be. But his claims to fame, his biggest known blends are the Monte Cristo No. 2 and the Monte Cristo No. 4. So I had 11 years of time before he passed at the age of 88, I want to say. It was around 88. He was way into his 80s. To learn as much as I could from him as a sponge. I just tried. I mean, this guy was phenomenal. The amount of knowledge over the course of his life is incredible. Hard to encapsulate it in the amount of time I had, but I tried. And I have to give 3 people the credit for where I am today, and he is one of them, for teaching me the craft of being a blender. And my father, of course, for becoming my partner and allowing me to get into this industry. Without him, I couldn't do that. And of course, Nestor Plasencia, with his resources of tobacco and facility for me to be able to use and create my products. So those 3 men, of course, there's many, many other people you can always thank, but those big 3 are the ones who made it possible for me to be here today in the capacity of being what others have dubbed me as a master blender. I kind of cringe at using that title, but it's been given to me by my peers, many peers, and that's really how you earn that title. I don't use that word lightly. I consider myself a blender, but when your peers consider you and consider your product to be at that level time and time again with another cigar and another cigar, it's not just a one-hit wonder. You've earned it through them. It's been given to you, not something you've addressed as yourself. So as long as they continue to call me a master blender, it's an honor to be able to say that my peers consider me a master blender, and I am in residency at the Plasencia factory because I don't own that factory. They do. I closed my factory in 2000. So I allow them, it's the gift of a lifetime to be able to say, I have some of the greatest tobacco at my disposal, some of the greatest rollers and resources at my disposal. And I get to play in the biggest tobacco swimming pool in the world and can do more things than most people could ever dream of because of the diversity and the quantity of premium tobacco that they have. So I'm very, very lucky to be able to do that. As a result, I own 6 brands myself, and I make cigars, I think now for 12 different companies, internationally and nationally.
Wow.
So I think we're in 41 countries now or something like that.
Wow.
If I add them all up, we have, as I mentioned, our bonded warehouse here in the United States, bonded warehouse in Europe. Because for logistics, I will tell you this. I got in this business to become a cigar manufacturer and a brand owner, and I ended up being a transportation expert because it's all about
logistics.
Logistics. I am really, truly. It is amazing the amount of work there is and expertise there is in moving this product because it's tobacco, and tobacco is one of those. It might as well be drugs, pharmaceuticals or ammunition. Because we're seen with the same disdain and difficulties with some countries from different paperwork and regulatory issues and warning labels that we don't have here in the United States yet. But all these countries have warning labels, plain packaging laws. And again, warning labels have to be certain sizes and certain languages and certain colors. So it has become a very difficult endeavor just keeping up with the requirements of all the various countries that we work with. But it's part of doing business. So we've had to learn how to do it. And that's part of learning to become a better businessman. And so that's what I've done.
It's such a fascinating backstory, man. So we went from how you were 18 when you joined the military?
Yes, I was 18.
So you went from 27 over 20 years, correct? Right?
I have over 30 years of service.
30 years of service.
Yes, sir.
And so we went military, we went fireman. We went now was that you were in Chicago, none of that's volunteer fire department, right?
No, that's Chicago Fire Department. No, I was a member of the Chicago Fire Department.
Awesome. So, and then how long were you a fireman before you went law enforcement?
Well, I went law enforcement first. So when I got out of the military portion of when I was younger, I went to the University of Illinois at Chicago, got my degree. While I was doing my degree, I also went to paramedic school. And then I was hired first, as you know, or many of you know, if once you are looking to get in the civil service business, you put your name on every list out there around you.
Mm-hmm.
The fire department, the police department, the sheriff's department, the neighboring towns department, and then whoever calls you first, then you consider that job opportunity. So the deputy sheriff, Cook County Sheriff's Department called me first. And so that was my first opportunity to become into law enforcement, and that's what I did. Following that, as a sheriff, a deputy sheriff, the Chicago Police and the Chicago Fire Department called me almost at the same time. So they opened the lists to hiring, and I had been on the list for both because I had taken the tests, and I had an option. I said, do you want to go police because you're already in law enforcement, or did you want to switch over because you're already a paramedic? And after working with the Cook County Sheriff's Department, I decided to go to the fire department because I think I had enough. It wasn't exactly as I thought it would be. And I think maybe, and if I was in a different position doing a different job as a deputy sheriff, maybe in a different county, or maybe a little bit more rural county or not as large a metropolitan area. But I will tell you, it was one of the roughest jobs I have ever had in my life.
Well, Cook County prisons or Cook County jails, one of the roughest jails in the country. I've never been there myself. Never been there myself. I don't. No, gosh, no.
You don't.
No.
But so for those reasons, I went to the fire department, and the fire department actually is a secondary reason I went because that's when I was starting my company in that time frame. It gave me the freedom to start my company because those were 24-hour shifts, and then I had 72 hours off when I was working on the ambulance. So I had 3 days off to work on my company and build my company. Because I didn't quit the fire department once I started my company. It wasn't until 2004 that I actually went full-time into the cigar business after I came back from Afghanistan. Because at that point, and to continue that story, at 2000, we moved to Placencia. 9/11 happens.
Yep.
My father disappears immediately. Yep. He's mobilized. And he hands me the keys and he goes, "Good luck, son. I don't think you got much time before you're called." He was right. I had about 6 months, and then we closed the doors for almost 2 years.
Wow.
Because I was in Afghanistan and he went to Iraq at the same time. My mother was very happy, I have to tell you. So and then at that point, once I came back, my company was in the toilet because we hadn't done anything for 2 years. The brokers that we had used at the time, because early days, we were one of the younger and first boutique brands out there. They had moved on. They fill their portfolios with another brand once you kind of become inactive. And we told them, I said, "Listen, guys, I gave the keys to somebody. I said, if there's an order, ship it." But I wasn't out on the road working with my brokers, doing events, promoting the brand. So you kind of fall off the radar with these guys as a young company. And they found another brand to fill their portfolio. And so when I came back, it was like starting over. Completely starting over. And so I had to make a choice. Do I continue with the company or do I close it and go on with something else? I had never quit at anything in my life to that point. Still haven't to this day. And I decided it was a success before that. And it was due to no fault of my own that we had this debacle. It was, the world happens. Things happen in life that are beyond your control. And so for that reason, I said, I can do it again. I can rebuild it. I just now have to do it on a shoestring budget because, as you can imagine, a lot of finances were lost when you just close the doors. Not to mention the financial loss that we initially had when we closed our factory off the investment of that one. So I went on the road on my own, and I had to build this thing from the ground up by myself, and slowly added salesmen, slowly added territories. Slowly added employees. One of those was a woman by the name of Christina Santana, who's just recently passed, no longer with us. And she brought me to Europe. She had been working with the Reyes family from Puros Indios. And when they had a change in ownership, when the old man died, and she came to work for us. And her family, my family, actually have a history as well into Cuba, back to the 30s. So she was almost like an aunt, And so she invited me, because she had already had relationships in Europe through Puros Indios. She said, why don't we go to Europe and see what we can do over there? And so that's how I started distributing in Europe. And she stayed with us for a number of years. You see what happens when I'm talking too much?
But you know what, though? I like that.
And then eventually, a larger company outbid me and offered her more money. And I can't fault her for that. You got to make a living, and they offered her more money, and I understood, and so she went to work for them. And just recently, this past year, she passed. So, great loss on a personal level, and in the business, she was revered and loved by many people.
So
I don't know if you had an opportunity to meet her, but
I have not. Sounds like an incredible woman. That did. I mean, obviously expanded your business quite a bit and opened a lot of doors. Probably opened windows when certain doors closed, which is a great business person. How many employees does Blanco have currently at the headquarters? Not entirely, but like across your rollers and stuff. But
all right, I'm counting in my head. We have 4 at the headquarters. We have 1 in the factory that works directly for me, even though it's a family-owned factory. I have my own production management team there, and another personnel that work there. So 2 there, and by the way, they're also family. They're also cousins of Plasencia and myself. So it's still family, but they work for us directly versus working for Plasencia. And then we have brokers and or people who work with us as 1099 employees on as a sales team. So I think we have 10, maybe. Then I have brand ambassadors, for which are one you just met not too long ago. From the UK, we have 1 in Europe. We also have 1 in the United States on the West Coast. And we're trying to expand our ambassador program as we speak.
Oh, fantastic. It sounds like it's a family reunion every time you go down to Nicaragua. So that's
absolutely.
That's kind of nice.
It is. I wish we had more time to talk and spend time and talk about family issues when we're down there, but it is so busy right now, ladies and gentlemen, with regard to the industry. You guys already see shortages and back orders and things of that nature with a lot of brands around the industry. It's a challenge right now for many, many reasons.
No, and it really, really is. And after you got back and you kind of went at this with a shoestring budget, what challenges did you have to get everything going? And kind of after this little mini boom died down, what challenges are you seeing now? Are you seeing similarities?
No, I'm really not. And for many different reasons. The boom in the 90s happened as a result of a popularity that came from at what we used to call back then yuppies. Yuppies were the young urban professionals that had disposable income and were being in fashion, in vogue, and it became, something real quick to, the next hot thing, right? And what motivated that, it was in no small part the Cigar Aficionado magazine. Because the magazine became a lifestyle magazine in which cigars were a part of, with a centerpiece, but yet still a part of. High-end watches, G5s, the jets, and the vacations, and the jewelry, so a lot of people couldn't afford those things in that magazine. But what they could afford of that lifestyle was the cigars. So they wanted to take part in that lifestyle, and they saw an opportunity. I may not be able to have all the fancy cars and the fancy luxury stuff, but I can still participate in the finer things in life, which was the cigar. And so that's what spurred this interest by a lot of people. And as a result, the audience of cigar smokers grew, right? We just suddenly had more cigar smokers. And it was a a time when the economy wasn't necessarily doing poorly. So I would say the last 6 years, four of those were better than the last two. I would say since COVID, things changed. Now, some people say when COVID happened, a mini boom occurred because people had more time at home and weren't working, or were working from home because they couldn't travel and they had more time to smoke cigars. And we did see an uptick in consumption. And as a result, we had to see an uptick in production. But production increasings were not possible in a lot of places because of COVID restrictions with regard to distance and space and manufacturing. So, for example, the Placencia family went to 2 shifts because they had to space employees out, right? So instead of having all the rollers, they had to have every other roller. They had to create space. So it retarded the ability to replenish the stock that was being consumed at a higher rate. So once the demand started diminishing slightly, as the economy continued to go this way, which is the difference, in this case, the reason the boom is petering out or slowing has nothing to do with financial issues with regard to the economy being great. But we just started, what's the next new thing? The reason it's petering out this time is because we can't necessarily afford, we don't have the same amount of disposable income we did when we had the early portion of COVID, where people were getting financial assistance as a result of COVID, tax breaks and or checks and things of that nature. In addition to that, the next problem we faced was replenishing the supply that we had prior to the huge demand and consumption. Because we couldn't replenish it as quickly or manufacture as quickly for various reasons, it took longer. But then we hit another big problem as of the last year and a half. I don't generally like to talk about politics, but I'm going to talk about something that you can't talk about without discussing politics.
This is an uncensored show, so
it's an immigration issue. We have a worker shortage in all of these countries where we manufacture cigars. The reason we have a worker shortage is because of the current administration's immigration policy of if you make it to the border of Mexico and give yourself up, you can enter this country and you will not be turned back. So now the golden ticket is being offered to everybody if they can make it here. As a result, Nicaragua being one of the poorest countries in Central America, as a result of other governmental issues in their own country with the Ortega regime, they are fleeing there, as well as Honduras and Cuba and the Dominican Republic. Even they are fleeing because who wouldn't want to come to the United States?
Oh, for sure.
So this is an opportunity for those people to make it here, to live the American dream. And I don't have bad feelings of them for that in any way, shape, or form. The problem is that it is becoming detrimental to industry in these third world countries that are already teetering because of the economy of the world. So we're actually creating a larger problem by shifting the immigration of these people or immigrants into the United States, which then compounds our own financial and economic problems within the United States that we're having as we're trying to exit a pandemic. So it's a double whammy.
Sure.
We're hurting ourselves there and we're hurting ourselves here. So for that reason, our problem with manufacturing and getting back up to speed, and so we don't have these back orders and things of that nature, is because we have a worker shortage.
So you're probably in a better position than most, just because your family, your uncle Nestor, and your cousin Nestor, probably the biggest tobacco growers, farmers, rollers, anything you want to add to that in the world. What is your understanding of how, if we stay on this administration just for a second, what is your understanding of what is going on with a potential embargo against Nicaragua that is being talked about. Again, I don't know necessarily the seriousness of it because it's not in the forefront of U.S. politics, but it is happening in the background. So what is your understanding of what is happening? What is your understanding of what to expect?
So now I feel like I'm talking like a political pundit, because I mentioned a moment ago that I don't like to discuss too much politics in these interviews. But
this is politics that directly affects you.
Sure, I get it, but this is all opinion at this point. So I want everybody to keep in mind,
totally,
opinion. In nobody knows what's actually going to happen, right? Because not only is our administrative branch putting out certain information, but they're also very reactive, so they can change. So what they say today may not be necessarily what they're going to do tomorrow, because something has altered their policy attempts at making policy, let's say. So from my perspective, I think this is a lot of bluster and a lot of hot air. The reason why I say that is because a lot of the companies that are in Nicaragua today that they say they would sanction or embargo are American companies.
Correct.
So they would be, again, damaging American companies by their embargo. These are not necessarily Nicaraguan-owned companies.
Correct.
There are other foreign investment-owned companies as well. So that economy relies on foreign investment. Not just the United States, but many countries have invested money into agricultural products, textile industry, coffee industry. There are, and in large part, a lot of American money and businesses are benefiting from that because they are part owners of those companies. So to embargo Nicaragua with regard to any imports would be damaging further the American economy, not only for the products, but for the profitability. So I can see a sanction, and they already have done this. They have sanctioned certain individuals in the Nicaraguan government with regard to anything that they own and or financial interests they have in the United States. So they're restricting those particular individuals that they're targeting that are part of that regime causing issues with regard to economic sanctions, similar to what they've done with the Russian oligarchs as a result of the Ukrainian issue. So that absolutely possible and continuing, yes. But to sanction and or embargo the entire country with regard to imports would be just cutting your nose off to spite your face, because you'd be damaging mostly American companies, but not only American companies, companies that have interests from Japan and or other allies in the region. So I don't see that happening, but it's a good threat. And it sounds like a great talking point that the administration is looking to do something against the regime. Well, if they want to do something against the regime, you don't necessarily embargo the entire country when the companies are American owned.
Correct. Because
which is different than what happened in Cuba, by the way.
Very different. I was going to say that. Yeah.
Correct. The embargo in Cuba was against the regime, but the regime had nationalized all the companies.
Everything. Yeah.
So they stole everybody's property and material and businesses. And so by putting an embargo in place at that point, you're actually affecting the regime's capability to monetize itself. Right.
Correct. And that's a really important difference, because you're going after Nicaragua right now I like the fact that they're using a scalpel over an axe. It makes more sense. They're going at it piece by piece versus the entire everything.
Yeah, but they threaten the axe. They threaten the axe, and it's a complete overreach. And for anybody who's any knowledge of the inner workings of the industry, any industry down there, and business in general in Nicaragua, you go, embargo Nicaragua. Those are all American companies, or a majority of American companies. Textiles and T-shirts and things and clothing that are made on there, a lot of them are American owned. Correct. In part, we're in a majority. So who are we hurting? We're hurting ourselves.
And that is right there the biggest distinction between an embargo on, I think the Cuban embargo is definitely the most famous embargo the United States has ever implemented.
course.
There's been little stuff here and there, but nothing along 60 years or something like that.
Yep.
So there's a big difference. That embargo directly tried to take money out of the regime's hands because they owned 110% of everything. Now, with that point, I asked this to George Rico, and I've asked this to a few others of Cuban descent, and I'm curious to hear your opinion on it too. Do you think without Fidel taking over everything, we would not have the cigars we have today? Now, let me further explain that question. What I mean is, if Fidel scared a lot of families out to Nicaragua, Honduras, Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, and everywhere else. So if that didn't happen, do you think cigars would be where they are today? And was that actually a good thing, hindsight, for the industry as far as quality control and everything else?
So on a microcosm approach of looking at this, if we want to look at strictly the tobacco industry, absolutely a good thing, because the diversity would not have occurred, of the growth of not only the industry in other Caribbean and Central American countries, but around the world, with regard to tobacco being grown for premium cigars everywhere, from Africa and Cameroon to Indonesia and the island of Sumatra and everywhere in between. So it also brought wealth to other parts of the Caribbean basin and the islands, as well as the mainland, with regard to dispersing the monies that were being derived from premium cigars. So yes, Nicaragua benefited from it. Honduras, Dominican Republic, Brazil, Costa Rica, all of these places benefited from it, because prior to that, Cuba was pretty much the only player, or the largest player, with small minorities in other countries that produced very small quantities of premium cigars. However, from a macro sense of the entire thing, I would gladly burn down my company to have avoided the entire thing.
Yes, because, as far as the detriment of everything.
Yeah, it has destroyed trillions of dollars of wealth.
Yes.
Families, businesses. The death toll we will never know, because we don't know how many people have drowned between the island of Cuba and the southern tip of Florida.
Yeah, trying to swimming over here.
Correct. Not to mention those that have died in the jails and where the firing squads and everybody else. So for the catastrophic damage that has occurred as a result of the 60 years of the degradation of that island, I would gladly destroy the entire tobacco industry when it comes to premium cigars if I had to choose one or the other, right?
Oh, of course.
Because the world is bigger than just premium cigars. And I say that being a man who makes my living off premium cigars and my family's heritage for 5 generations. I would be willing to trade that to spare what has happened to that island for the past 60 plus years. It's an absolute.
And I totally,
and this isn't just there. Yeah, it's happened in the Eastern Bloc countries with the Soviet Union. I mean, this is not the only record in the in our area with the United States and the country. This absolutely has happened in other parts of the world. But I have a familial tie in relation to this one. And my family, as well as all the family and cousins that I mentioned, their families have been uprooted, destroyed, separated. It's been a tragedy, as there are many in the world. But this one is special to us because we lived it. My father lived it.
Yeah. No, and you know, I asked that question not to say that, it needed to happen, but I asked the question just to kind of gauge your opinion is, that specific move, would we have what we have today in the premium world?
Absolutely not. And so basically I'm a glass half full guy, right? So of this tragedy that had occurred, at least what is the good that we could at least pull from it, right? This is one. The premium cigar industry has thrived and grown throughout the rest of the Caribbean and has created diversification and allowed me to create cigars for everybody to enjoy with tobacco from around the world. I have cigars with 5 different countries in it. So
That's
that would
awesome.
never have happened. That would never have happened. But
no, it wouldn't have.
Again, that's a microscopic viewpoint. But for me, the glass is half full because I always look for the bright light in all of the dark areas.
Correct. And I think that the families that left did the best they could with what they had, and a lot of them soared. And you mentioned that you have certain blends with 5 different tobaccos. Let's touch on your blends here for a little bit.
Sure.
So we're smoking the 9 Lancero. I love the Lancero. This cigar is fantastic. The spice you get out of it, the body of it, it's actually very impressive how strong this cigar is. And I am enjoying every bit of it so far. So since you're also smoking the 9, let's kind of talk a little bit around the name, the 9, where that came from, and a little bit about the blend and how you came up with it.
Sure. So this was actually the cigar that put me on the map back in 2006, I believe. It was rated in Cigar Aficionado in the Lancero size. And it tied the Cuban Cohiba Lancero, which is world renowned, right? So we got the same rating, and we were sitting on the page right next to that cigar. And that's when people first started taking into account, well, we know the Cohiba. What's this Blanco cigar thing for like a quarter of the price, right? At the time. So that kind of people, we still, hey, well, the phone started ringing about the 9 Lancero, the 9 Lancero. How did the 9 come about? So I'll back up and I'll tell that story real quickly. There was we were looking to bring a full body or full flavored cigar to market that I had not focused on in my portfolio as of that time. And so I was looking to develop that. And I met a retailer in Texas, in San Antonio. The name of the shop was Cigar of San Antonio, no longer exists. And they were interested in a private label house cigar. So I negotiated with them and said, why don't we do something if you're looking for that kind of cigar, genre of cigar? They said, yes. If you're interested, why don't we use you guys as a test market, see if the blend goes over. I'll give you guys exclusivity for when we bring it to market and for a certain period of time. And then if we get good reviews on it and it is well received, we'll go ahead and make it a national brand, right? We'll bring it out. So they wanted to bring one of their employees who had a good palate at the time and was very involved in the cigar industry at that time with regard to the culture. And he came down to Nicaragua with me to the factory and was involved in as his palate was involved, taking into consideration what they were looking for. So we used what they were looking for and what we were trying to accomplish through him. His name was Joe Torres. He now works for Club Humidor in the San Pedro location in San Antonio. If anybody's interested, he's still there. He's a great guy. That being said, we came up with the 9. And it happened to be the 9th blend on which we finally accomplished what we were looking to accomplish. Simple as that. We kept going through blends, and we have a scribe that writes the blend down, and he had to keep tweaking the blend and keep changing the ratios and changing the tobacco. And finally, I was like, I think this is it. What do you think? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, which one is this? They said, it's the 9th blend. I said, it's the Blanco 9. That's it. We'll just call it the Blanco 9. And so that's what happened.
Well, the 9 is a 10, like your
website the 9. I say the 9 is a 10, or it's number 9 on the band, number 1 in your heart. So the format of the cigar is actually 100% Nicaraguan puro. It's a oscuro corojo or dark corojo wrapper grown in Nicaragua. 3 different ligeros in the filler from Esteli, Condega, and Jalapa, and a Nicaraguan binder as well. So all Plasencia tobacco. And it was actually rated number 1 cigar of the year in the Lancero Vitola in 2018 as voted by consumers on iRobusto.com, which was an international voting board of, I think, 70 plus cigars, I think it was. They opened it up to their consumers and said, here's all the cigars we reviewed for the year. You guys rank them. Number 1 cigar of the year. We also got a 95 in CA, Cigar Advisor. We also got a 93 in Smoke Magazine, a 90 in Cigar Snob, and Best Buy in Cigar Journal. So this is my most highly decorated cigar to date, and we continue to have it be one of our best sellers. But we have a lot more in our portfolio since 2006. But I brought them out if you wanted to talk about some of the other ones. But This is my favorite cigar. I actually make it in a 4-inch version in a 5-pack. We call them minutos because they take a short amount of time to smoke. And they come in a 5-pack. So on a little paper wrapping, it'll say 5 minutos or 5 minutes, which is kind of a play on words there.
Now, let's definitely showcase a few more of your blends, but I know that you also do, well, you got yourself involved with the largest influencer inside of the cigar world, and I want to hear that. I don't think I've ever heard that story talked about by you, but I'm very curious. Brian Glenn of Cigar Obsession, who was an influence for me doing what I do, and he has several cigars put out, and I think you're the exclusive blender of all the CO, but he has the coinage that he pretty much did 15, 16 years ago of first third, second third, final third. And those are all 3 different cigars of his that you make. So can you kind of, who reached out to who? How does that friendship start?
The friendship started when I met him probably 10 years ago. And he was reviewing some of our cigars. He doesn't live far from me here in the area of Tampa Bay. And over the course of many cigars, smoking and talking, because of course we both have we're both professional consumers. Number one, we love to smoke cigars.
Yes.
So we share that passion. He from a consumer perspective, me from a consumer, but also a brand maker, a blender and brand owner. And so he had mentioned to me, he had discussed with some other manufacturers he was interested in maybe as a fun marketing activity or project to have his cigar with the Cigar Obsession name on it. But none of them wanted to make anything special. What they wanted to do was just relabel something they already had and put the Cigar Obsession label on it. And he said, absolutely not. That is not what I'm trying to do. I'm interested in making something special for my viewers, as well as the Facebook group and everybody who viewed him all around the world. So when he mentioned that to me, I said, I'd be happy to do that. And he said, really? I said, yeah, I'll be happy to blend cigars and we can do a Cigar Obsession line. Not a problem. He said, well, it can't be anything. You're just repackaging. I said, no, I'll tell you what, Brian. And by the way, he says this in his reviews as well. He didn't want any financial interest in this. It was simply a fun marketing project for him because he didn't want to jeopardize his independence with regard to the reviewing anything else, anybody thinking he was now in the business, because he's not in the business. But it was a fun project for him. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I will blend them. I will do all that stuff, but I want you to at least give approval to the blends as to they're worthy of the marketing project. He said, absolutely, I'm happy to do that. So I brought him a cigar. It was called the First Third. This is a maroon and gold band on here with a maroon foot ribbon, box pressed in Toro size. This is exactly the cigar I handed him. Not the exact cigar, but just the same format. The same format that I handed it to him. And without the band, of course. And I said, tell me what you think. And he goes, I love it. Absolutely love it. I said, okay, well, we got a cigar. So we came out with the First Third in Toro. That was it. And we wanted to see what happened. And people went bananas for it. They loved it.
Correct.
And so we were like, okay, well, let's do 4 sizes. Let's make this a brand. Let's make it a line of cigars. So we came out with 4 sizes of First Third. And the reason we called it the First Third, because as you alluded to, when he does his cigar reviews, he says, let me smoke the First Third and tell you what I think. And then he says, let me smoke the Second Third. We'll come back. And then the final third. So it was easy for me to name the first 3 blends: First Third, Second Third, and Final Third. That.
He coined that. He absolutely coined that.
He did. So that was the first 3. We wanted to do 5. And at the time, the FDA was breathing down our neck. So after I did the First Third, which is an Ecuadorian Sumatran wrapper, interesting blend all by itself, then I went, that's left field. I went right field and I gave him a Cameroon Very interesting blend. It's got Mexicans, it's got Nicaraguan, it's got Brazilian tobacco in it, Cameroon wrapper. I mean, that's a pretty exotic blend. And I wanted it completely be diabolically different from the first third. And he said, I love it. So we had the second third, and we decided on 4 sizes for that. Here's the second third. It's a green and gold band with a green footband. The Cameroon are not box pressed. They're not box pressed because the wrapper is a little bit more subtle and delicate, similar to a Connecticut shade, and we'd have a lot more breakage if we did that. So the first third is box pressed, the second third is not. Because of that FDA situation, we said, man, we might only get 3 of these out. We may not have time to get the other ones out. So, Brian, if this is all we got and we got 1 left to do, I asked him, I said, what's your favorite cigar now? And he said, well, I said, if it's going to be the last cigar and it's got the CO name on it, it should be your favorite cigar. You shouldn't be walking around with a Cigar Obsession name on a cigar, but you saying this is my favorite cigar from some other brand. It should be yours, right? So I said, what's your favorite cigar now? And I will do my best to give you my version of that cigar. And he said, it was a real easy one. He said, the Padron Family 50th and Natural. I said, really, man?
That's on so many favorite lists.
So I reverse engineered the best that I could. A Padron Family 50th and Natural. And I gave it to him in Robusto, box pressed, exactly as they make it. And he said, holy cow, you knocked it out of the park. I was like, wow, thank you very much. I'm very honored. So that was box pressed. So we settled on 4 sizes. They only make theirs in Robusto. We make it in Robusto, Toro, Lancero, and Torpedo. And this is the gold band.
Well, I can tell you, I know where my next big cigar purchase is coming from, which is going to be Lanceros in every blend you make off of your website. You're going to see like a massive order come in. And I'll let you get back to it. But the reason why I say that is because I love smoking Lanceros made by Lancero smokers. I think there's a lot more pride. There's a lot more time, and there's a lot more quality into that because you are a Lancero guy. And so I do think that it shows more when a owner smokes Lanceros and makes a Lancero. I think personally those have a tendency to be better quality controlled, better blended, along those lines. And so this is phenomenal. Yes, you will see a big order with Ryan Miller coming across here probably in the next month or so when my wife lets me spend more money on cigars. So anyways, so you did 3 blends, you expanded them out to 4 lines. Now let's kind of touch on just your stuff for a little bit. You have the Prince Hall.
There's one more before that. Since the FDA lost, or I should say punted, and they got off our back, and so we're now still able to create new blends, I had a time to do a 4th. And we still may be able to do the 5th. But the 4th we came out is called the BG Reserve, with Brian Glenn's initials.
Ooh.
Purple band.
Ooh.
This is box pressed, pigtailed, and closed foot. 4 sizes. 4 sizes. That
Can you take that out of the wrapper? I want to see what that size. That's interesting looking.
So it's technically called a figurado, right?
Okay,
because it's a figured shape, right? But I will tell you a little story on that one as well. It's interesting.
But it's a closed foot, not a shaped foot.
This one is the only one that's not closed. All of the others in the line are closed foot. This one we snipped only because it didn't look as nice. So
that's a nice looking shape, almost kind of like a bala shape.
Well, the reality is it's almost or very similar, I say, to a Drew Estate pig.
Mm-hmm.
But it's box pressed. So we did a little play on words, since on the box it says figurado. So a lot of people now call it a fig instead of a pig.
That's very nice looking cigar.
Thank you. It's a Mexican San Andreas wrapper.
Okay.
On this one. So again, now we have the Ecuadorian Sumatran first third, the Cameroon second third, the Habano from Nicaragua on the final third, and then the Mexican San Andreas on this one. And then if I have time, which is the plan to make the fifth will be the DB selection with my initials on, and that will be the bookend into the series of Cigar Obsession cigars. Right now we have 16 SKUs or 16 Vitolas, 4 in each blend. But once we have that fifth blend, it'll be a total of 20, and I think that's plenty.
Well, I think you got in really, really good with somebody that I do think had a huge role in launching kind of you across the platform. I mean, he's 160 some thousand subscribers. The guy did a video every single day for years. And the first time I ever heard Blanco and the first time I ever saw an interview with you was on CO Live, and then was on him reviewing your cigars. And so I think that was very intuitive of you to see that opportunity, and you ran with it. It was great.
Yeah, it was, and it was easy for me to do because we became friends. Just because of our proximity to each other, and the friendship that we came together, and we actually do every year a special Christmas show for CO Live, and I hope to do it again this year as well. This I think will be the 7th CO Live that we've done. So,
I think you've been on his show more than any other guest.
Probably. I'm also a lot closer to him, so It makes it a lot easier for me to just come over and do it.
Absolutely.
But I agree.
Now let's kind of get into the Prince Hall a little bit.
Sure. So the Prince Hall, also another very interesting story. I tend not to make cigars let's put it this way. The Blanco 9 name is probably the easiest way I've ever come up with a name or design for a product. They usually have a lot of story and background behind it, like the Cigar Obsession line did. The Prince Hall is no exception to that. Oh, I've got them here too. So here's your Prince Hall. There we go. And that's in the Maduro. It also comes in a Habano Rosado. And it comes in 4 different sizes. So Prince Hall is a man who lived in the colonial period of the United States growth, and lived in Boston. He was thought to be one of the first men to join the Continental Army to fight in the Revolutionary War, which makes him an original military veteran of the United States Army. He was a businessman, and he was also drawn to Masonry. As you guys are familiar with a lot of the founding fathers, most of them were Freemasons, Washington and the like, right? So same period. So he was drawn to Masonry, and he was denied acceptance into Masonry. And there's one reason he was denied, because of that time. And it's the one thing I left out of the story, which made me or led me to want to tell his story through a cigar. To bring light to his life and his history.
He was not a believer in a God? Oh, was that what it was? Okay.
He was black. So despite he was one of the leading abolitionists of his time, fighting for equal rights and education of blacks at that time, can't even really call them African American because there was no United States, right? So they were here, immigrants, first generation, second generation, or had just come to the country. He was fighting, being that he lived in Boston. He was free up there, and he was a business owner. He was respected in the community, and he joined the military to fight in the Revolutionary War against the British. So the man had a moral code and integrity, and was drawn to Masonry as a result of these same things that they believe in. fairness, fair play, things of that nature. But despite all of that, because of the time and the culture that they lived in, it wasn't feasible. What he did, however, find was before the war, he found a group of Irish conscripts who were basically the cannon fodder for the British soldiers. They would go into battle before they did. So on the totem pole of importance of where they were in society, they were this much higher than blacks at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they were meeting for masonry in their lodge, and he asked if he could join them. And they said, sure, why not? Yeah, no problem. So he became a mason. And then he had a few friends, also black at the time, that said, you mind if I have some other black friends that would like to join? And they said, sure, that's fine. That's fine. And then, of course, then it grew to, you mind if we start our own lodge of Masons for our brothers? And they said, no, you can't do that. You have to get a permission from the Grand Lodge in England, in London, and you have to ask for, permission to, it would be granted the right to stand up your own lodge. And he said, oh, okay, well, I'll write and send it off and request a petition for my own lodge. And well, he writes it, and then the war happens. So now all these guys are gone, but the petition has been sent. He continues to meet with his friends. At this time now, they're all gone, but he continues to meet unofficially because now that lodge was with them. It's gone. 11 years later, he gets a letter back. We're talking tall ships and horses and all this stuff, right? 1787, he gets the petition back, says, your request has been granted. So that lodge he was meeting with of his own little guys became official, and they renamed it African Lodge Number 1. So now we start two different hierarchies of Freemasonry in the United States. You have the line of free and accepted Masons, which is Washington and all the other forefathers that you're aware of. And then we have the African-American line, which now it's the United States, the African-American line now forming, and it's parallel because they both believe the same things. They both say the same things. They both have the same rituals, and they make the same commitments to each other and everything else, but they're parallel because of the structure of slavery dividing whites and blacks at that time. So they had to come up with a name. They had free and accepted Masons over here. Well, what are we going to call ourselves? Well, they spoke amongst each other and everything else, and he was the first leader of the first lodge, so it became synonymous with him. So if you're an African-American Mason today, however, you don't need to necessarily be African-American to join. If you join that lineage, you are known as a Prince Hall Mason. Wow. So you have free and accepted Masons and Prince Hall Masons. Now today, none of this matters for all intents and purposes. We both recognize each other. I am a free and accepted Mason. That's why I say we both recognize each other. I'm also a 5th generation Master Mason. So my family's been in Masonry a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. But having said that, there is no difference between us with regard to the organizations. But for historical purposes, they keep the lineage separate from ours because of the historical background and history that they have. And we understand that. It's a sense of pride for them, and we recognize that pride and respect it as well. But we are brothers alike. As a matter of fact, the current sitting master of my lodge was former Prince Hall, who came to free and accepted Mason, and now he's the leader of my lodge. So this issue of in the past of the segregation and racial issues was worldwide, including every organization, similar to what we had with women in certain organizations. Now it is a fraternity, so we do not have women in Masonry. We have an appendage body for our significant others called the Eastern Star, the Order of the Eastern Star.
Do you guys do DMLA?
DMLA is for the children,
the kids,
for under 18. Yes. And we also have the Shrine, which many people are very familiar with, the Shriners Hospitals for Children. Mm-hmm. I am also a Shriner. Again, that's that service part of me that is a portion of giving back. Yep. But there's also the Scottish Rite and the York Rite and things of that nature. So there are many different appendage bodies.
Oh, yeah. Real quick, my granddad, this is another kind of crossover that you and I share. My granddad was 33rd. Is that the highest ranking?
Yes. Well, that's an honorary degree that they give. 32nd is the highest in the Scottish Rite. So 33rd is conferred upon your peers as for your service and for everything that you've done to the order.
So in Ocala, Florida, the lodge in Ocala, my granddad helped resurrect, start
kidding.
that lodge a long, long time ago. And I got to go. It is for lack of my knowledge. I promised him I would become a Mason at some point. I just haven't yet. But when he passed, he got the whole kit caboodle ceremony. The Scottish Rite came in, did the whole bagpipes for him.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got invited into the Grand Poobah room for lack of understanding of what the room is actually called. And apparently I wasn't supposed to be in there, but my granddad made the lodge guy promise to bring me in, show him that side of his life, or show me that side of his. They opened up the file that they had on him, and because they had like 10 different filing cabinets full of everybody's stuff. And they gave me his very first lodge photo, because I guess they said they replaced him every like 5 or 8 years or something. And so they gave me the very first lodge photo, and they're like, we're also not supposed to do this, but we were told we were promised and sworn that we were going to. So I have all my granddad's Masonic stuff, my dad's DeMolay stuff, and some of my granddad's old Masonic photos. But he always told me, when I asked him one time what the Shriners were, he said, "Oh, that's the fundraising and party arm of the Masonic Lodge." He goes, "It's always drinking. It's always serious on the first floor, drinking on the second floor."
now that you've told me all of that's happened and everything you've done, I have to kill you.
No, but it was actually really, really cool. They let me sit in the grand chair, and they.
Oh, now I definitely have to kill you.
Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta text somebody. They'll be right over.
Right. But I mean, it was really honestly kind of like, I didn't know that side of my granddad. So when I got to meet the 15, 20 guys, and then all of a sudden they start telling me stories, because at the end, my granddad filled in for the guy that left the lodge, and his job was last rites, going to hospitals for fellow Masonic brothers and doing stuff like that. That's kind of how he ended inside of the Masonic Lodge. But it was just really fun to kind of, learn that backstory that Granddad, honest to God, never talked about, other than the fact that we always knew his ring, because he would sit in church with his arm around my granny and me sitting next to it, and he'd bounce the ring off my head when I was sleeping or falling asleep. So I knew that ring very, very well. But no, it's a great lineage, and the Masonic Lodge is a great story of the United States. And I love the fact that you kind of rolled that in to your blend. And it just shows that you take your passions and you bring them into your blends. You bring them.
I want to honor the man. I wanted to honor the man, not necessarily for masonry, but masonry is part of his story. But what that man accomplished during his life is no short feat. He was 120 years before his time, and doing what he did. So for me, it was a vehicle to provide somebody with a great cigar, but yet tell a great story and educate somebody at the same time about something they otherwise would not have known. And so for those reasons, I wanted to honor him. And it's my art, so I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't sculpt. I blend tobaccos. And so I wanted to share that with him.
And you do a great job. So I want to kind of move on to a series that I've had this whole year with every single guest. And you had mentioned it in the very beginning of the show. And I want to kind of go back to that. You had brought up your mentor. I've been in sales 20 years. The only reason why, or over 20 years, the only reason why I have succeeded and still in sales is because I have mentors in my life that tell me everything I don't want to listen to because they're correct and I need to listen to it. So I wanted to kind of ask you what your thought on mentors as well as mentees in your world, because you've lived so many different careers. You have to have an expansive, shows my age, Rolodex of people that you can call on. So what is your belief in somebody having a mentor in their life?
Well, I think it's critically important. Of course, my mentor first was my father. And if you're lucky to have a father that can also act as your mentor, you're very lucky in life. Not everybody has that privilege. There are a lot of absentee fathers, single mother households, and not that mothers, single household mothers don't do a Herculean job at what they do, raising children. But there is a difference between, in my belief, between the female and male role models. And so the relationship can benefit depending on the sex of the child. So that being said, I followed a lot in my father's footsteps. Actually, to this day, a lot of people, you're just like your father, But the reality is, there are certain things that others will say, you're just like your mother. And so they tried to both instill in me the best of who they were. I hope I've lived up to that sacrifice that they both made. But mentors can help you focus, get ahead in life, identify strengths and weaknesses that you can't in yourself, because it's from an external point of view, and the immaturity of growing. They've been there already, right? So they've already experienced these things. So they are aware of the surroundings that you going through things as a young man or woman may not be. You're experiencing these things for the first time, but they experienced them 20, 30 years ago. Some things change, but other things don't. So as a result, I've been a mentor to many people in this industry, as well as my life, no matter what I've done. I was a United States Army drill sergeant, as we call them, drill instructor, as the Marine Corps calls them. So I have shaped and trained a lot of young soldiers, 18, 19, 20 years old, to become young men. And that's really what happens when you go to basic training, infantry school and airborne school and things of that nature. So it's a very delicate time of some young man's life, or woman's life for that fact, that you have the opportunity to impress upon them certain things, and things like the Army values. If you don't know what those are, I'll give you guys homework to look them up. It's very important, and it's a great way to live your life with honor and dignity and respect. Other than that, I was a paramedic officer, and I was a paramedic instructor. Being an instructor, you're mentoring and teaching people life-saving techniques. And I don't know how many people's lives I've saved. Have I saved some? Yes. Did I save them all? Absolutely not. But the fact that you pass that skill on to others is a life-changing event for them and yourself. As a law enforcement officer, I was also an instructor at two different police academies. I've taught firearms and different techniques of building clearing and tactics and things of that nature. And that also has saved people's lives, their own and others. So, acting as a mentor is something I've done throughout my entire life. As a mason, that is another one. You bring up younger gentlemen in the organization and teach them the things that are important to the organization. And we are a very philanthropic organization. Yep. We believe in certain things like we are our brother's keeper. Mm-hmm. So those things are very important to me. And I take them all very seriously when I mentor anybody, because I had some very good mentors. I wish I had more great mentors in my life at certain times in my life, of course, but it's a very important thing.
So one of the things that I've realized in my life when evaluating, because it's not like you walk up to somebody, you're like, hey, you're my mentor now. It kind of has to happen naturally, to the point where you don't even, it might be a month or year down the road before you're ever even looking at that person and going, wow, you're actually a mentor of mine. So what is your opinion? Go ahead.
Yeah, it depends. Certain circumstances, it's thrust upon you, and others, it develops, right? So, for example, my mentor in the cigar industry, Ovelio, that was something that developed because I showed an interest in learning, and I basically continued to attach myself as much as possible. He saw my interest in learning, and I eventually asked him to teach me more. And I sought more knowledge from him, and he chose to pass that knowledge as much as he could, and the amount of time we had, to me. He didn't have to, but he chose to, and I was more than willing to learn it. In other ways, such as being an Army drill sergeant, you're put there to teach them. That's it. Whether they like it or not, whether you want it or not, you're their drill sergeant and they're the private and they're going to learn from you. So you have to find a way to reach people, and it's not always the same for every person. So you have to be able to read people. And in sales, reading people is a very important skill. Yep. So you have to read your audience, you have to read the individual, and you have to understand what it is that they're looking for or their interests are to get them to be in a receiving mode, whatever you're teaching them, and whatever information and or experience that you're trying to get them to understand, for them to learn from. And people learn in various different ways. Some are more visual, some are more rote, some are demonstrative. These are all different methods that I've been taught throughout the years in many different jobs of how to get to certain people and to teach them in certain different ways. So I am more than just Dave the cigar blender and cigar guy. But this is my passion, make no mistake about it. I've been doing it now, February will be 25 years. But I am proud to be able to say, as much pride as I muster, to say that I believe to be myself a more well-rounded, positive influence, or I try to be at least, on people that I come in contact with. And that's all you can hope to be in this life. You know, if people walk away saying, I like that guy, or he helped me out, or I learned something from him, or he was just a good person, then you've left your mark and become a better person for the world. You know, so you've left a positive mark.
Let me ask you, in your opinion, as somebody that's been on both sides of a mentorship, as a mentee and a mentor, how important is it to be able to find somebody that tells you information that you don't, or I should say not information, but critiques you in a way that's building, but that you might not want to hear? And I ask that because I have not picked up the phone for a couple of days for a couple of my mentors because they know I screwed up. I didn't want to listen to it. But at the same time, I needed to. So how valuable is that in a mentor that they will jump on you to build you up?
Sometimes it's not needed, because if you felt yourself that you didn't want to hear it from them, it's because you were already aware of the mistake or the error, right? So they've already instilled it in you for you to identify it yourself. It doesn't keep you from making mistakes or making the error, but you already know that the error is there. And if you understand the error is there, you're not as apt to repeat it, right? So the fact that they reinforce the behavior that you want to correct, that you yourself already know was problematic, is in on itself a testament that you've already learned the lesson, even though you've made the mistake, because nobody's perfect. So do you need to hear from them? Yes. But did you already know it? Yes. So they did their job. You need to self-analyze why those things happened and try to keep them from happening again, basically learning from your mistakes. That's part of life. I learn every day. I am not a perfect guy any way, shape, or form. I've got a lot of flaws like all of us do. But every day I get up and I try to learn from those mistakes and try to become a better person than I was the day before. And there are plenty of people to remind me of my mistakes. Trust me.
So I actually, again, as somebody that's been on both sides of the coin, I had a mentor that gave me advice for several months in how to improve myself. And instead of listening, which I later found out I totally should have, because he was giving me the groundwork and the blueprint to be the successful person I am today. But I decided to go at it on my own. And one of the times he just sent me a bill in the email, and it was for a lot of money. And I was like, what is this? And he goes, well, I've been giving you advice and I've been telling you to go up and you've been going down, to take a right and you took a left. So if you're not going to listen to me, then you're going to pay me as a consultant. He goes, because I have no financial gain in you. So he goes, this is all my time. And it took that spark for me to understand that everybody's time has a dollar value. Every hour, every minute of everybody's day has a dollar value on it. And after that, I realized, oh my gosh, he is taking time out. I never appreciated that. So how important is it if you have a mentor or you are have a mentee, that time that you're giving them is incredibly valuable, right?
Correct. So value is relative. And what I'll tell you about that, and this is the most interesting cigar interview I've ever done, because we're talking about a lot of things here. I think I'm going to give you a bill at the end of this as well.
Do it.
Seeing how you brought that up was pretty funny. But value is relative. So if something is freely given to somebody without them necessarily having to earn it or do something to warrant that free information or whatever that is being given, then it has no value. So if you had to earn something, or if you've had to strive for something, or if you had to sacrifice for something and work for something and make mistakes and get back up, as we all do, that is what has value. If something is freely given to you, you're more apt to not value it because it cost you no effort.
Yep.
And so I think that's what you're referring to, is that
correct?
The person that you're mentoring has to understand the value of what you're giving them.
Yep.
And that's why, as a mentor, sometimes you don't give everything necessarily easily. You make them work for it. You ever watch martial art movies?
I love them.
All right. So you get it. Remember the guy who just started and they beat him up and he has to pound his fist 1,000,000 times and stuff before he gets to the next lesson?
Oh, yeah.
That's where he understands the effort in getting to the next, to the next, to the next. That was just a crude example, but it's one that I guess if you were looking for a demonstrative type of example, that would work. Again, testing, things of those natures to prove to that person, that mentor that you have are worthy of and are capable of accepting the next level of information or the next level of experience, or handle the next level of responsibility in some cases, depending on if it's work related. Right?
No,
those that get promoted
totally
demonstrate, right? They demonstrate to get elevated. Right?
Absolutely. So as my mentor said, the company I work for gives me hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for my advice, and I'm giving it to you for free. So don't make me feel like my time is wasted.
Exactly.
And that's something I took to heart, and I still take to heart when people do give me advice. And to be honest with you, I love this type of, and thank you so much for going down these rabbit holes, because I love this. Shows, in my opinion, a side to you that I feel brings more of your passion out, more of your personality out, and shows people that you're just a normal guy. You've had an absolutely fantastic life, a lot of careers, but you also have a lot more advice to give than just a cigar guy. And that's kind of what I try to show when I have guests on, is that it's more than just cigars for people. It's your whole life that brought you to where you are. So to appreciate the cigars you make, you have to also appreciate where you've been and all the things you've gone through. Like I tell a lot of people, I should have a lot more regrets than I do in life. But every time I look back, everything that I've gone through has made me the person I am now, and I like me. So if I was to change what happened in life, I might not be me.
The
And
good
it's
and the
kind
bad.
of it's kind of the butterfly effect aspect, you know? And so bringing your story out more than just your cigar story, I think allows people that insight to go, wow, David's got a lot more to offer than just cigars. He's clearly very passionate. Let's see if it carries over to his stuff. And if I've never tried it, let me try it. So
Well, if I have another cigar coming anytime soon, I will be able to reference this interview as being the genesis of that thought process, and the name will be The Rabbit Hole.
Well, there you go. Yes, absolutely. There you go. And we'll have you
That's
back
how
on
I
to
think.
talk about it.
That's how I come up
Now,
with these things. You know,
I have one more question, and it's just a yes or no, and then we're going to get to your event coming up on November 5th.
No.
And we're going to,
no. The answer is no. Whatever the question is, the answer is no.
I had somebody once tell me, and it kind of stuck with me. Show me your 5 closest friends, and I'll show you where you'll be. Do you agree with that statement?
I actually said that tonight, or I thought I was about to say that tonight to somebody, because I was having a discussion with my friends here this evening, and I was gonna say, and I guess I never actually said it to him because I got distracted doing something else. It was, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. That was what I was about to say to my friends, and I never ended up saying it. And then you just brought that up. So, very interesting statement, because I believe it to be very true. You surround yourself with those that you have similarities and or are like-minded. You share values with those people. And they also could possibly bring something to the table that you may have a weakness in. They complement you. Yep. And they provide something in your life that you don't necessarily have organically, whether it be your behavior or your personality or just your character. And so you're very rarely friends, lovers, spouses with people that you can have differences, but polar opposites, contrary to popular belief, don't necessarily make for good bedfellows. You have to have some common ground in life to be able to be successful and have successful relationships with others. Mm-hmm. That being said, I am a perfect example of how I learned from all of those experiences, because I've had great relationships and bad relationships, and I'm not talking personally, business-wise as well. And as a young man in this business, I've learned the hard way sometimes that I screwed that one up, and that's now going to cost me business, mm-hmm. Or that person wasn't necessarily the person that I want to do business with, just the opposite.
Correct.
So, however, in business, what you try to do is separate your personal beliefs in life from your business persona. Mm-hmm. So I will tell you that very few people actually know me in the business realm, because there must remain a certain distance between who you are personally mm-hmm. and who you are outwardly as a professional. Mm-hmm. I think that's inherent in any business, not just cigar industry, that's in life. But that being said, another very smart individual told me once upon a time that everybody deserves to know the real you. Mm-hmm. Take that for what that means to you personally.
I absolutely subscribe to that thought. at some point in time, you do have to let people into your world. And it's sometimes often hard for people to do that, which is why I've had this whole mentor aspect to the show this year, because I believe that a lot of people in life would be a lot better off if they had somebody to confide in, if they had somebody either as a personal life mentor or as a business mentor, would be a lot more successful. As somebody that's been through the marketing department or marketing area for a long time, one of the first things I ask business owners is, do you have a business professional that you get advice from? And what I've actually found,
you can have many mentors throughout your career, you know.
Correct. And they go in and out. And they go in and out. And
they take it to different levels.
Correct.
You know? For example, I don't usually mention many names because I've mentored a lot of people in this business. Some have worked out, some have not. Some have had certain levels of success. Some have had more, some have had less. But one who has had success and is doing very well is a name that maybe you're familiar with. His name's Sean Williams.
Oh,
Sean came to me, and I was the gentleman he approached to do his private label. At that time, he knew how to smoke a cigar. That was it. I took him down to Nicaragua, and we enjoyed spending time together. I taught him, those were my young mentoring days many years ago, 2006, I believe, of, manufacturing a cigar, building a brand, blending a cigar, blending all of his cigars, helping him come up with the name of his brand, distributing his product, importing his product. I've done that for probably at least a score of people. So that's one of them where I'm happy to see him where he is today. I'm proud of him. By no means was I his probably biggest or best or most influential mentor in the industry to him, because the amount of time I had with him was limited, but I happened to be the first, right? So, at some point, a person grows and continues on their trajectory, which separates from yours, and they find another mentor and another mentor and another mentor, and takes them to where they are. So,
absolutely,
it's nice to be able to say, I knew Sean when, and it's great to see him. It's great to see him where he is today.
Absolutely.
So I wish him all the best.
And we're going to touch on your November 5th, but I just got to give you a little bit of props. You demonstrated exactly the value that everybody should look at a mentor. And it is when they leave you, they left you better than when they came to you. And you have no financial stake in him. He didn't work for you, but you care about his success, which is the number one thing that I look for when I look to bring somebody into my life is, what are they there for? Are they going to gain off of me, or is it going to be a mutual beneficiary relationship? So thank you so much for showing that example and demonstrating exactly the way a mentor mentality should be, which is, I didn't gain off of him, but it was awesome to see him gain off of me and see where he is. So
I think it has to be genuine. I think that's the word.
100%. 100%. So let's touch really quick on what you're doing on November 5th. And then I've got a few lightning round questions to end the show. And then stick around at the end and we'll close it out. So let's talk about your November 5th. What is it? How do people partake in it? Where is it?
So every year we do a customer appreciation herf to celebrate you, the consumers out there that support Blanco Cigar Company. And we want to thank you every year and throw a huge party here at the Blanco headquarters in Seminole, Florida. And like I mentioned, I think I mentioned earlier, we have people that come from all over the world. We've had people from Scotland. We have Dom to this time from the UK. We have somebody coming from Germany. We have people coming from Canada, all throughout the United States. It's a big party. We have a full meal with all the courses, appetizers, desserts, bar, DJ. We put a 40 by 40 foot tent out in front of our place in the parking lot, and we just throw the biggest party we can. We have a huge table full of raffle prizes that we give away. It's a tremendous amount of fun. We are going to have a Cigar for Warrior participation with some of their stuff as well. We're also going to have a competitor of yours, not necessarily a competitor, but another podcast that is going to be there as well, called the Great Lakes Smoke Show.
Oh,
They are
love Ronnie and the guys over there.
They're going to do a live podcast here. They were here last year as well. They're here this year. As a matter of fact, if you watch their show, are you familiar with Jera, who participates on their show? The girl who's part of it.
I'm not. I've seen her, but I don't know her.
So Jera met them here at my Herf last year, and then became part of the show.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, they were actually one of the first ones that brought me on a show.
There you go. So we have a lot of circuses going on. We're going to do a 50-50 and raise some money for some benefits as well. We're raffling a bunch of things off at the table, including a trip to Nicaragua, a TV, some customized decanters and rocks glasses, and with Blanco logos on them. We're going to have cigar specials. It's a huge party. It goes from 1 p.m. till midnight, if that doesn't tell you how big of a party it is. I think last year we almost had 150 people. It's grown over the past 6 years. Every year it gets bigger. And this is actually the first year to try to at least remain as close to revenue neutral as I can, because the thing has grown so large that we're actually doing a ticketed event. And it's $50 for all the food you can eat, drinks, 2 cigars, music, the raffle. You get to be part of the live audience with the podcast and all of that. And it's just a wonderful time. And we get to thank everybody for their support and helping us to continue to grow every year. Is it no means is it easy every year to continue to grow in this economy world that we currently live in.
Sure. So, is it you call it on the cigars, or are they already picked out?
No, we're going to go ahead and pick them out for you. There will be 2 different cigars to give 2 contrasting profiles, so it's not 2 very similar. So I try not to make cigars that are too similar to each other anyway, but I don't want to give you 2 milder cigars. I will give you something mild or medium, and I'll give you something on the more robust side, so you have contrasting. And then it's fun to see everybody trade.
Absolutely.
I like more milder stuff, and then they trade. I'll take the 2 mild or medium, and you take the 2 full body and stuff. So everybody ends up happy in the end anyway. But it's fun to see everybody do that. It's like Christmas.
And for those of you that are in the area or would like to travel for the event, go to blancocigars.com. All the information is there. $50 a ticket. You get a bunch of swag from it. You get all you can eat, which if I stood up, you'd see that I enjoy that aspect of an event. Plus, you get 2 absolutely fantastic cigars. And if one of them doesn't hit your fancy, find somebody to trade it with.
That's right. And you'll have a drink ticket because we got lots of spirits. Lots of spirits, so you get to pair with it and have a good time. You can buy them on our website, or we know a lot of people like to buy at the door. You can also buy at the door. We're not going to turn you away.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like an incredible event. And one of these years, if I ever get out of the mountains because of COVID, maybe I can come down there and kick Ronnie out and be the one that does the event. No, I'm just totally kidding, Ronnie. But a few lightning round questions that I ask literally everybody. What is your favorite cut of cigar? Or
flat
cigar? So you're guillotine.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Or I will be frank with you. I carry my Cuban cutter everywhere I go.
I was going to say that surprises me because I've heard the teeth or the finger.
The fingernail,
it off.
I can cut a cigar as good as any DuPont cutter you can buy, or Colibri, or whatever you like to, with this thing right here. As long as you want a flat cut, I can't do a V.
That takes a little bit more work, maybe.
Yeah, it's a little more difficult.
What is your favorite pairing?
Well, I've been a rum drinker for a long, long time, but I do enjoy Scotch, bourbons, ports, coffee. So I guess I would have to say what my mood was in. I'm not going to have a scotch at 7 a.m., but I will have a coffee. So it depends on the time of day and what I'm trying to, what I'm in the mood for. And basically, if I've eaten, is it after dinner? I'm all over the place with that one. I'm equal opportunity, but I predominantly tend to lean towards rum. So I'm a rum drinker by nature.
So
But I love coffee. I love coffee
let,
with my cigar.
let me ask this. So for everybody watching, what is your go-to cigar and go-to rum pairing if you were to offer up a pairing?
Okay, so the Blanco 9 Lancero is my favorite cigar. So if I had to choose for that cigar, which rum I would pair, Flor de Caña Gran Reserva, which is also Nicaraguan, would be one. Zacapa XO might be another. Or if I'm looking for another type of rum, there are two others that have a different finish. One is called Dos Maderas, which means the two woods. Dos Maderas is done for 5 years in oak barrels in Guyana and then 5 years in sherry casks. So it has a sweeter finish, slightly, just slightly. So if you're interested in a very interesting rum right there, Dos Maderas, the 10-year, not the 8-year. The last and final one for a different spin, if I'm looking for something like that, is Bamboo. If you haven't tried Bamboo rum, very interesting rum. It has a very vanilla bean finish, phenomenal, and also great with the Blanco 9. So I've given you 4.
Perfect. And in fact, Dan, before you even said Zacapa, said Zacapa rum and coffee. Dan Thompson of McAuliffe Cigars said Zacapa.
How you doing, Dan?
Was one of his. And by the way, we are in Australia tonight. We do have an Australian viewer. Very much appreciate Thomas Crenshaw. Always give him a big shout out because I don't know what time it is in Australia, but he always watches the show. So I think
it's almost 12 hours difference.
Yeah, it's a long time difference. So he starts his morning with me, which I appreciate. What is your favorite two-part question? What is your favorite wrapper? Now, you can give me musician like some have and cigar wrapper or just cigar wrapper, up to you. And then part 2 to that, what is a wrapper you would love to work with but don't currently?
Okay, so my favorite wrapper is Corojo, for sure. Followed closely by the San Andreas.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to be a little contrarian here than most of your guests. Because I work at the factory that I work at, I have every wrapper under the sun available to me. And I have either brought it to market for myself, somebody else, or I have got some cigars that I've blended that not necessarily are on the market, that are in the can, as they say. I have used almost every wrapper that I can possibly think of.
Okay, so let me ask it like
there isn't a wrapper that I haven't used, I don't think.
Would you be open to trying some of the more obscure Middle Eastern, Irish, Transylvania tobaccos? Real quick, is your Cameroon, is that an African seed or is that a Cameroon?
From Africa, from the Marifal family.
Oh, well, Jeremiah, you can't get better than that. So would you be open to trying some of the more obscure, hard to use stuff?
Absolutely. I am all about doing something as different as possible. There are enough cigars out there that are so close to each other that what's the point? So I try to, the only reason I made the final third, the way I made it, as I expressed with you guys, is because that's what Brian wanted. I'm giving him his version, or my version of his favorite cigar. So other than that, I don't ever want to make a cigar like anybody else's. I want to at least have some nuance and some difference in the aromas and tastes. So I'm all about using very different things. I've actually used some of those exotics that you mentioned, not those particular. I've used Russian tobacco. I've used premium Italian wrapper.
Okay.
Which there are no cigars with it right now.
I've never.
So I have gotten, because of Plasencia's capabilities of obtaining some of these things, I have gotten to use tobaccos out there that have not seen the light of day yet in the marketplace. In experimental phases, that's what I love to do. If I had a place, if I could choose what I did in life and where I would be in life, I would lock myself away in the blending room, and I would have people just send me every tobacco on the planet and see what I could come up with, because that's my passion. It's just creating something new and different out of tobaccos is what I strive to do every day.
Well, I have a line on some Transylvanian tobacco that would be a fun Halloween cigar for you. We'll talk here after the show.
Sure.
We'll talk here after. It's very, very different and very aggressive, but it's very good. So last question of the night. If you had one person, not Jesus or Churchill, that you would smoke a cigar with throughout history, and you brought them a Blanco cigar, who would it be and what would you bring?
I don't think she'd smoke it. It would be my mother, who's no longer with me. But for that reason, it would be my mother, to be able to see her again. She might light it just because I asked her to. But for the reasons that are selfishly that a son who misses his mother, it would be my mother. That would be number one. Of course, I was asked that question previously, and the answer was Jesus Christ, because that answers all the questions in the meaning of life. And I will tell you, it was a very difficult answer to give, because it was immediate for me to say Jesus Christ for those reasons of the answers and meaning of life. But I will tell you why it was a very difficult answer.
Sure.
It was on a show that was primarily for the Middle Eastern
market
audience. And I didn't know how that was going to go over politically speaking, but I explained that it would be the same as, somebody saying, if I was a Muslim, Allah. And I think that was understandable, being the fact that for my religion, being a Christian, it was Jesus. But in that case, if you're a Muslim, it's like saying Allah, and they got that. But Jesus would have been my first answer. My mother, because I miss her dearly. But if I had to think of a humongous personality out there, boy, that is a difficult one. King David.
Okay. That's interesting.
King David. Yeah.
That's interesting. And he, biblically, he had a very weird relationship with God in many different ways. And from a historical figure, was a very interesting and complex guy. Now, the real question is, what Blanco cigar would you bring for King David?
Not knowing his tastes?
Yes. Not knowing him.
I'd probably bring something medium body with a Habano wrapper just to play it safe. Right in the middle of the road for that one. Yeah? Don't want to go too strong or too mild. He'll probably be able to handle something medium body with a nice Habano wrapper.
Well, David, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate and looking forward to the rabbit hole cigar, but appreciate you running down the rabbit hole with me and getting a little bit more personal in an interview, I think, than probably what you've done from what I've seen. And I truly, truly appreciate that. It's always nice to show a different side of people. And again, I'm all about showing where somebody has been, because that allows you to understand where they are. So thank you for a little bit more insight into kind of how your mind works and to how your business works. Truly appreciate that. And huge shout out to all the show sponsors. I didn't get to do it at the beginning. So Drew Estate, thank you so much. Abe DeBabna over at Smokin', K by Karen Berger, BAMF Cigars, McAuliffe Cigars. Tonight, the drink of choice for me was the Axe and Oak, which went very, very well. Cask strength bourbon. It was David's recommendation that I drink something a little stronger to match the cigar, and it went incredibly well well with that great cigar, as well as Sagrado Cigars and New Air Humidors. Thank you so much for joining the show, and I appreciate all of the comments and all of the interactions. And until we see you again, smoke what you like, smoke as often as you can, and have an absolutely great rest of your week. Bye, everyone.
Stay smoky.